Thank you for listening to this PodcastOne production. Now available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, PodcastOne.com, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Steve Austin Show is brought to you free today by our friends at BetOnline. The casinos may be closed, but the BetOnline casino never closes. Let them bring Vegas to you. Get in the mix at betonline.ag and use the promo code PodcastOne for your 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts and exclusive partner of PodcastOne Sportsnet.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Now, here's Steve Austin.
All right, sitting here with Mick Foley here at 316 Gimmick Street. That's why I call the studio here, Mick. When you put it in your address on your little iPhone, 316 Gimmick Street, Mick shows right up. Right up. People all over the world keep telling me, Steve, I keep putting 316 Gimmick Street in my iPhone. It says address does not exist. You know it does because you're right here in front of me. Welcome to the crib. It's good to see your ass.
It's good to be here, man. I feel honored, under a lot of pressure, though.
We ain't under no pressure because I was thinking, how do you start off conversation with my old travel partner and a good friend and a guy who's been down the road as many miles as you and I have? And then you drove up. I said, hey, park in front of the driveway because parking's tight. And as soon as you drove up, I said, that's where we're starting. You rent a car.
Let's do it, man.
Everybody knows you're one of the cheapest cats in the history of the business. And I say that with all due respect.
With reverence, yeah, I appreciate that.
Because, I'm number 2 right behind you. So you come cruising up in a brand new 2014 white Dodge Challenger. I said, damn, I thought you were going to stop, put some 24s on that. Come, pimping ain't easy. So what's the deal with the damn hellacious car? I'm glad to see you treating yourself with a little style.
I did. There was a defining moment in my life, and I don't swear much, right?
We'll do whatever you want.
I'm gonna drop one for you because this, and very seldom did I talk in first person either, right? Yeah. But I remember my third day in the company, WWE. I didn't have much of a relationship with Vince for a year or so, like, hello, Mr. McMahon, how are you doing?
You called him Mr. McMahon?
In the beginning, yeah. Gotcha. And then I went so many years calling him Vince that I remember going back. It took me years to figure out, and this is going all the way back to when Vince had the explosion where Mr. McMahon had died. And I wasn't happy about it. And at that time, I had the stroke to say something. Right. That stroke is long gone. But I went up to him and I said, Vince, I said, I got a call from a soldier who really was blown up, and he was worried about you. And I got a call from a little boy who really is dying, and he was worried about you. I said, this is an incredibly poor taste. And he goes, Mick, Vince McMahon didn't die. Mr. McMahon did. And I said, do you think our audience knows the difference? He goes, of course they do. And it was right then that I realized what he was talking about, like a year earlier when we're doing, it was a live backstage interview, otherwise he would have caught it. And I referred to him as Vince, and he said, what did you call me? I said, Vince? Like, I never knew where he was going with it. Yeah. And where he was going with it was, he's Mr. McMahon. Right. And I had no idea they were two separate people.
Right.
So, yes, but going back to 96, I'm new in the company, and he comes up to talk to me. And he sees me putting something behind my back, like a little kid. He finally asked me, what do you have behind your back? I said, nothing. What do you have behind your back? And he pries out of my hand a book that says, America's Sleep Cheaps. Cheap Sleeps. How to stay around the country for less than $30 a night. Because that was prime on my mind. At that time, I didn't know how long my run was going to be. I had pretty good faith from a lot of experts. It wasn't going to be long at all, So I was saving every dime I could, and it finally got to a point where I was somewhere in West Virginia. I'm wrestling The Undertaker. I'm not on top, but I'm second from the top, And it comes time for me to find a place to sleep, and I paid $25 cash. No credit cards accepted. You have to go around.
Two smart marks out there, kiss ash.
And I lay down in this bed. The bed just sags underneath my weight, $25 cash. And I just looked up at the ceiling, and I said out loud, I said, what are you doing here? You're Cactus fucking Jack. And I talked in first person, called myself by my gimmick name, and cursed out loud. I went over to the guy, and I told him that wasn't going to support my back. And I went in, and I got like a $50 room. I went from the 1-star, the bully to the 2.5, 3-star level. And And I realized, that, man, maybe those glory days where we're tripling up in the lodge, they make for great stories, but I was going to have to invest in myself a little bit better. So although I would have loved to have shown up in a car that would have pleased you, first and foremost in my mind is comfort of the driver's seat. We were talking off air about the fact I went on a 15-date tour, 15 cities and 15 dates.
Suicide run.
11 states, 92 hours of driving. And I need that good front seat. And if you're
Cactus fucking Jack.
I'm Cactus. I've already dropped my one F-bomb. I try to use one an hour when I do my show. And it's you take whatever's in the lot. If you're a national guy, you get your pick once you've had that.
You're part of the club?
Yeah.
Like I'm on the Hertz number one
Yeah,
club.
yeah. And you have your pick of 7 or 8 things. They had an SUV. They had a couple other things. And the cars were too small. And I knew that Dodge had the prime.
I got in a while ago to move it. You parked the wrong way on my driveway, so I got in, spun that thing around. That's the first time I've ever driven one of them challenges. Pretty nice. Sweet ride.
Yeah, very nice.
You hauling ass? You got your everything buckled up?
Yeah.
Hey, you know what I saw? Yeah. Everybody is. You got your iPhone. I saw your technology, and you and me go way back before cell phones were even around.
Yeah.
You got your road map over there. You don't just type in a destination on your iPhone. You got a physical road map.
Yeah.
The people listen to the Steve Austin show. Some of you are so young that y'all don't know that a paper map actually exists. And you look on the highways and byways and shows you how to get places. Mick Foley, Cactus fucking Jack, has a real road map on his passenger seat. You don't see them anymore.
You don't see them. And honestly, I don't usually travel with one, but there are times, you have to verify. You go type in your GPS, you get the thing, and then check it just to make sure it's okay.
Yeah.
Because I've been out there, and I'm sure you have too, where the GPS takes on a mind of its own, and you end up going a long way.
Me and my brother-in-law was in a car the other day. Was going to Chico, California from Sparks, Nevada. It says hang a right on Ellis Road. It's a dirt road.
Yeah.
We went a quarter mile down that thing and said, hey, do a U-turn. I ain't trusting this lady in the iPhone. We took the long way around, and sure enough, about 6, 7, 8 miles later, on the right-hand side of the road was Ellis Road. It was a shortcut, and we didn't take it, so it proved us. It kind of blew up on our face on that one, but
I'm all over the state. I'm all over the state of California, so I at least need to know where I'm going. I like to see where it is, and then
let's talk about the state of California, because you're here right now. You're at my house right now, and you think you're going to do a show in Pasadena. But as the show drops, you're going to be in Brea, California, the 14th. You're going to be in Ventura, California, on the 15th and the 16th, a double shot. 31st of August, Denver, Colorado. 13th of September, Farmingdale, New York. 16th of September, Maple Ridge, B.C. 17th of September, Revelstoke, B.C. 18th of September, Vernon, B.C. 19th of September, Kamloops, B.C. 20th of September, Prince George, B.C. 21st, Grand Prairie, B.C. 23rd, Edmonton, Alberta. And then Lloydminster, Alberta on the 24th. And it goes on and on and on. All you got to do is go to realmickfoley.com to see where Jack is at, or if you want to go check out his show. My question to you is, dude, what are you doing? Are you stark raving crazy? You're supposed to be kicking it now. You worked your ass off. You beat up your body. Steel chairs to the head. You should be kicking back, picking your spots. You're hitting it hot and heavy.
It's hard. The dates are coming in. I've been working on this for 5 years. I went from where I couldn't get anybody to go to the show. I mean, it was frustrating. I'd do a book signing, and I'd have a good line. I'd do a minor league baseball game, great line. And when I'd ask people, hey, you going to go to my show, I could tell people were lying to me about they were creating excuses not to go to the show because it doesn't seem to make sense. It seems like a giant leap when actually it's like a little sidestep. I'd look at guys and they go, really, you're doing, I never should have called it comedy. Should have gone with spoken word.
Right.
Should have coined a phrase like WWE did with
So what is it? Is it comedy or spoken word? Just stories?
It's a wrestling-centric storytelling show. That's hard to put on a marquee.
Right.
That are largely humorous, but don't have to be.
Right.
And I can make a point. I can get a little, and I make sure if I'm going to get sensitive or sentimental that I got something really shallow lined up. To dip my toe into. And I'll make points, I try to cover some serious territory, but I also...
Like what kind of serious territory? I mean, is there any life lessons in your act? Because, I mean, God dang, many times we've been around together, a lot of our friends that have died, drugs, bullshit, stuff like that. I mean, you got any life lessons in your shows?
Man, one of the
Or are people not paying to see that? They want to just hear Mick Foley flap his gums.
I used to say I want to make people think as much as I want to make them laugh. And then when I got a real look at the economy and how tough some people had it, I became a big believer in the power of the smile. Like, you know what? They can get the heaviness somewhere else. I mean, it's, you know, like with my books, people picked up little lessons about life. I'm not going to force a lesson on people. If the one lesson I try to pass on is that, you know, you don't let the situation define for you what being a success is. You know, like I always, you know, WrestleMania moments become part of it's part of the lexicon. You know, so I refer to things as this is my WrestleMania moment. You know, like I had a thing where I was doing a little Santa Claus appearance because I have a weakness as you know, for Santa, and I was doing it for a friend of mine who has a side project with Nora Jones, and I come in and I show up late. I almost left. I was cursing out loud. The GPS tell me I'm on the Brooklyn Queens Expressway, and I could see the BQE over me. I was on the verge of leaving, and I looked in the mirror and I said, if you don't go back in there, and I got my beard bleached white, and my skin's all burned underneath, you don't go back in there, do the best jobs you can. You don't deserve to wear this. And so similar lessons to what you're doing in wrestling. And then when I walked in, it was like entering the land of Oz, you know. And I walk up there, I say my little piece. Nora Jones goes to sing Silent Night, and I'm looking at a microphone, and Nora Jones about 8 feet away from me. And I thought to myself, if you don't walk up there and start singing Silent Night with Nora Jones as Santa Claus, you regret it for the rest of your life. Cactus freaking Jack. And that was like, I'm looking at it, about 400 people there, and it's like, this is a WrestleMania moment. Like, this is it feels as good as anything ever did inside that ring. And that's really the only lesson I have, is that, you know, you can take a guy who used to perform in front of tens of thousands and put him in some case in front of tens of tens. Yeah. He's usually in the hundreds, you know. I mean, I need double digits to have a good time. You can't have a single digit crowd. But I'm enjoying it, and I have to go back to 2000 when I was the commissioner to think of a time when I had this much fun. Right. And from just a financial perspective, I mean, one of the problems, you were probably like me. It's a wonder that JR and I have stayed friends all these years, because I was not shy about making that 203 phone call when I thought the paycheck was a little light.
You got to. And this is a life lesson to any of the boys out there listening to this podcast. Hey, man, you got to rattle a cage sometimes in regards to payoffs. And another quick segue, I always tell guys, these youngsters coming up, always ask the house, know your spot on the card, who you work with, and time is... You know, when it comes to buck for promotion, you will have some concrete evidence, and you will have learned the system. Continue your story.
I know we're going to go off on a lot of segues here, but I know people want to hear us talk wrestling. And you had Zach on a few weeks ago, and I felt like I had to write something about the Zack Ryder case, and I was going to call it the tragedy of Zack Ryder, and then I watched the evening news and saw real tragedies, and ended up calling it the sad case or sad story of Zack Ryder. The saddest part about that whole situation is when I asked him what happened, he said, I don't know. I said, you never asked? And he shook his head and he said, no. And it's like, it's almost expected. Like, you need to, like, that's one of the big tests, like, above and beyond what you can do in the ring. You need to make that knock on that door and state your case. And in his situation, he had a rock solid case. He could point to merchandise.
Yeah. He got himself over on YouTube.
I mean, you know,
great little show.
Yeah.
Long Island, IZ.
And people respond and say maybe he didn't have legs, he'd have to tweak the. Yeah, he would have to. But, you know, you need to
give something a shot.
Case. Yeah.
I mean, hell, the kid got himself over.
And so that is a lesson for everybody there, is that, you know, when you first come in, of course, you're humble and you expect, you know, you're happy to be there. But the business doesn't do well with guys who are just happy to be there.
You got to paint a target on another guy up's back and go after that guy. I mean, you're out there to take everybody's spot. I mean, you don't really – this is me looking back and reflecting. Yeah. But, I mean, as you were, I mean, God dang, we went down the road together. We were hungry as hell. Literally, we were starving. But we was always trying to make it one notch up on the card. I mean, you know, when you grew up as a fan of the business – and Jack lives on Long Island. Before we roll sound, I said, you live in Long Island.
It's on
anyway,
Island. Yeah.
Dude, you just want to be a pro wrestler, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's always your dream to be the main event.
You know what, Steve, I'm in a little different categories. I've been told for so many years. Yeah, I didn't accept that was my end.
Dude, did they program you? They beat you down so much? You had so many naysayers. You overcame a lot.
But I never saw myself as being a champion. Like, I honestly, when you say, was my program a success? Like, in our case, we wrestled. You were going on to you were going on to the next big thing. When I had The Rock, it was because he was about to wrestle you. You know,
Right.
like I knew my role and I accepted it. I mean, to this day, when people say like, do you think you don't get does it bother you don't get enough credit? You know, that you're not up there with.
I think you do get plenty of credit.
I do
but
too,
you had your naysayers while you were in the trenches.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of them.
Yeah.
Saying, but the end game was making a contribution, and then having the best possible match I could, and then deciding whether or not the guy that I worked the program with was worth more to the company.
Right.
I honestly saw myself as a role player up until 90, until I got to WWE and saw 96. All right, I can compete with the big boys. I remember taking that plane ride for my first tryout, and I was a little bit intimidated, and I had to sit back and think, wait a second, I've wrestled with about 2/3 of these guys.
Right.
I'm going in to do business with The Undertaker, but deep down, he's the same guy I rode with
right.
6 years ago. Like, it hasn't changed that much. And I had that level of pep talk to myself. It's an intimidating situation.
So then tell me these phone calls you would have with Jim Ross, because
you're
I
changed my tune.
You must be vociferously. Hell, I used a big word. He used lexicon. I come back with vociferously.
This is a wrestling podcast.
There's some dumb some bitches out there thinking, what the fuck are they talking about? I thought they were going to talk about steel chairs.
To this day, I can't say the word trepidatious without thinking of you. I was like, Pat, why are you being so trepidatious? Even used it in my Hall of Fame speech. Trepidatious is good New York Times #1 best-selling author word for hesitant.
Well, I got trepidatious from a Randy Macho Man Savage promo. He goes, trepidation is the word of the day, and went on to discuss his match with whoever it was at the time. Tell me about these phone calls with Jim Ross. How heated would they get? Because I talk to Jim all the time.
Yeah.
And he says he talks to you pretty frequently. And
yeah.
He loves you to death. So obviously you guys are still great friends.
Yeah, it's a wonder. Because
How hot and heavy did you stand your case?
Fairly hot, fairly heavy, but not too frequently.
Right.
So they always made something. They always made a difference. They always meant something when I called.
Yeah, you're not pissing and moaning every paycheck.
Yeah.
You got to pick your spots.
But it was somewhere around 98, I think, when I realized that I was I realized I was a player before the world got the message,
Right.
on that Monday night show where all the people turned the channel. And, I did state my case, and, Vince respected that.
Right.
JR would go to Vince, and they would usually bill something a little extra in a couple cases,
Right.
A lot of extra money, and and I think that was as big a battle as anything you'd be part of in the ring, was just fighting for what you thought you were worth.
And speaking of what you're worth, when I came into the WWF as a ringmaster, I'd been down in WCW, and I'll talk about WCW money. When I left there, I was making about $275. My first year in the WWF, I made about $100,000 less than that. Then I started getting hot that next year.
Yeah.
And real hot. And it was coming on pretty fast. And this was back in the day when they would bring your W-2 or your 1099, whatever your tax return form is, at the building and hand it to you. And it was at a TV taping. It was a Monday Night Raw. I remember like it was yesterday. Many things I forgot from all the steel chairs. I remember this. I got my 1099 or whatever you call it, and I looked at it, and it said X amount of dollars. Man, I thought I'd really smoked everybody's ass at that point and come up the curve. And my pay didn't reflect that. And I was walking around in a pretty bad mood, and JR comes up to me and goes, what's going on? I said, hey, man, I just got my gimmick. And I said, I don't believe this is what I made. I should have made this. Well, let me talk to the old man. He went and talked to the old man. The old man made up the difference. And that was my big boost on the way to starting to make the coin that would come back in the day. But I voiced, and stated my case and was pretty firm on it because I thought I'd had a killer year.
Yeah.
And so, but that was my first case of really having to start bucking for a promotion. But if you don't buck,
no.
Nick, to you youngsters out there, you got to buck because you got to learn.
Let me open up a can of figurative whoop ass here.
Go ahead.
Have you seen Drew McIntyre since he left WWE?
Wasn't he just on TV a while ago?
In Scotland.
Oh, he's in Scotland. No, I haven't.
Nice kid, right? Nice young man.
I met him one time.
Seemed to be about where he should have been on the card. he reached out to me via social media. What do you think I should do? And I said, watch WWE Countdown, and watch what Paul Heyman says about Stone Cold Steve Austin when he left WCW. How Paul's secret was he took that anger that you had and the frustration and let you channel it into something productive. I said, watch that and learn from it. And a couple weeks later, I get this thing. He says, Drew says, would you be willing to watch something? I said, sure, I'll give it a view tomorrow. And when I say that, who knows? Might be weeks before. I said, you know what? I owe it to this kid to watch this thing now. And it was like watching a different human being. Like if anyone would have said, do you think Drew Galloway, real name, has that inside him? I would have said, no, he's a mid-card guy, love him on 3MB, not a main event guy, never will be. And in 10 minutes, he changed my mind. And I'm not knocking WWE because they were working with what they thought they had. But I think he's somebody in the same way that when I left WCW in both 90 and 94 and wanted to come back as a different guy to be taken more seriously, he's somebody I think the company needs to have an eye on, because I was like, wait a second, I forgot this guy's 6'7". He's 270 pounds. He's ripped. You forget he's a good-looking kid.
Right.
And I'd never seen a dose, like a thimbleful of aggression in him. And it was like all there in Scotland. I mean, feeding off the crowd, announcers calling it like a match. It was really exciting, and it just did that idea that if if you're not happy with your lot in life, you do something about it. And I think I just wanted to make it a point on your show, because I know your show carries some weight. This is like I wanted to write a post about it, but if you go over a couple of hundred words on a post, people lose interest. And so if you're out there, people check that out. You'd be shocked at how good that kid can be. He's 29 years old. He comes back in a year or two as a man instead of a kid, and doesn't let people remember him the way he was. You've probably seen good wrestlers come into WWE. They just seemed almost physically shriveled. The ring's a little bigger. Everybody's 6'6", 270, and unless you got in your head that you absolutely positively belong there, you just you shrivel up psychologically.
I'm talking to the legend Mick Foley. We're talking about all kinds of bullshit here today on the show. We'll take a pause for the cause and a word from my sponsors. Coming right back with the one and only Mick Foley. Support for the Steve Austin Show comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Home today is so much more than it was yesterday, but at Rocket Mortgage, home is still all about you. During these challenging times, the top priority at Rocket Mortgage is the health and safety of the communities they serve. If you need mortgage assistance, their team is available 24/7 to answer questions and offer solutions. Whether that means saving money on your mortgage or finding a new way to navigate payments. From their home to yours, the team at Rocket Mortgage is with you. Visit rocketmortgage.com/Austin to learn more. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states. NMLS, consumeraccess.org, number 3030. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Push button, get mortgage. With currently no NBA, NHL, or MLB, you might think there's nothing to bet on. Well, you'd be wrong. Our exclusive partner, BetOnline, still has hundreds of sports, events, and games to wager on, or let them bring Vegas to you with their online casino and blackjack. All open 24 hours a day and all online. The BetOnline casino never closes. Missing the NFL? No problem. BetOnline has live daily Madden NFL 20 simulations you can wager on. If you're into props and entertainment betting, you can still bet on Survivor, Big Brother, American Idol, stock prices, and even the weather. For all of my NFL football fans following the upcoming draft, stay tuned through the end of this episode for Ross Tucker's expert draft analysis presented by BetOnline. Sign up today for a free account at betonline.ag and use the promo code PodcastOne. That's PodcastOne for a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, your online wagering solution.
The Steve Austin Show. The Steve Austin Show.
All right, coming back with Mick Foley. And we're talking about your show, and it's basically about a good time. Same thing with my podcast, man. My job here, I feel, is just to entertain people. I mean, and it's about nothing. It's almost like a Seinfeld show. It's a poor man's Seinfeld. And I say that with great respect to Jerry Seinfeld. I'm not trying to put my name in his in the same paragraph conversation, nothing. But so people want to hear us talk about wrestling. Let's talk about it. Your physicality throughout your career was off the charts, extremely high threshold for pain. All the bumps that you took, probably you paying the price for them now.
Yeah, definitely.
How are you feeling?
It's been a tough couple of years, honestly. It really has. We didn't know nearly as much as we did about concussions, first of all. And I thought a concussion was something that knocked you out, had you throwing up, and so I guessed I'd had 6. And then we come to find out that it's not just the major blows, it's those cumulative blows, including body blows. Who would have known?
Yeah.
Like, who would have ever guessed that a backdrop on the floor, say, can you imagine, a neurologist, orthopedic guy looking at a backdrop on a concrete floor in slow motion, what that does to your body? And you think about it. I mean, I remember wrestling you at house shows, backdropping you, number one guy in the business, and you're taking backdrops in the concrete at house shows because you were doing what you thought you had to do to pop that crowd. In retrospect, maybe some of those decisions weren't that sound, especially post 2004.
Is that when it started catching up to you?
Well, it's 99. I remember Hunter actually saying to me, like, people say, "Hey, Mick Foley must be like falling apart," and Hunter was like, "No, he's actually moving around pretty good." That was like 98.
Yeah.
Within about a year, I mean, I was like a different human being. Everything hurt. Like, it caught up. Mother Nature and Father Time kicked my ass in a hurry.
Mother Nature, Father Time.
Brother.
But you didn't have any major surgeries yet. Did you have anything replaced?
You know what? Here's part of the problem. I went to top. Well, the neurologist gave me two of them, Ixnay. It's kind of this is something I'm proud of. I want it on my epitaph. When Dr. Cantu from the Boston Center for Traumatic Encephalopathy told me in no uncertain terms that I could never go in the ring again. I looked at one of the top neurologists right in the eye and I said, "I can work an entire match around my left knee." That's a great wrestler line, right?
Yeah.
Like I can work an entire match around my left knee, and he looked at me and said, "Mr. Foley, when you were in my office 2 weeks earlier, you struck me as a bright young man." He said, "I've been doing a little reading." He said, "You got a lot going on." He goes, "If you think you can find another neurologist to clear you, that's up to you. But I'm telling you, as a neurologist, you should never be in the ring again." And it was like an enormous weight was off my shoulders. It really was.
How so?
Because
someone gives you a reason to walk away?
The ball was taken out of my court. It's
Right.
almost like a boxing match where the guy throws in the white, the white towel.
They did it for you.
Yeah. And I had that talk with Edge 6 weeks later. I was driving through the mountains of North Carolina. I was like, "Hey, Edge lives somewhere around here." Gave him a call, and he was like at total peace with that decision because he realized coming back means risking paralysis. It's not a matter of guts. You can't do it. And I think guys like us, you need that guy telling you can't do it because otherwise you will be sitting there. And I probably could have had a good match with Dean Ambrose.
Right.
10 minutes, with all the bells and whistles. I mean, I was even going to call Undertaker and say, "Can I please, for one match, can I come up through the ring?"
Right.
I had everything lined up, and I thought we had a heck of a match. So it was easier for me to have the ball taken out of my hands and kind of walk over to that bench and sit down.
When I was in Seattle, WrestleMania 19, man, I was drinking a little bit, living too fast. I've told the story too many times. I won't tell it again. And I went to the hospital that night, ambulance. Heart was going crazy, drinking too many speed stacks and all that other bullshit. And they put 4 liters of fluid in me. I was dehydrated. Didn't really give me the clearance to wrestle the next day. Yeah. But I was going to because it was WrestleMania 19, and I knew I had to hang them up. And so I had to, go to work because that's what we do.
Yeah.
So I went to work. Man, I remember showing up down there, and, man, Jason, the guy who works at WWF, had the place lit up. It was a beautiful building, there in that arena there. KD and all the gang was there. JR rode with me. I was in a real, someone even looked at me wrong or talked to me. I damn near want to start crying because it's my last match. We didn't get a chance to tell everybody because I needed to ride off in the sunset because my guy said, "Hey, dude, you need to get out of Dodge and you need to do it now." So, went and did it. But I remember Rock hit me with 3 rock bottoms. On that last one, I laid there at 1, 2, 3. And, man, the feeling, it was just like what you said. A weight was lifted off my back. Because I didn't have to go out there and put anything on the line anymore. And don't get me wrong, I would have kept doing it, but someone took the ball out of my hand. So I felt that relief.
Yeah.
And it was, Steve, it's okay to go now. Because the doctor said, "Hey, you need to get your ass out of here."
Yeah.
So I felt like that. I felt relieved. And now when I look back, I'm 12, 13 years removed. And I think if I never would have had the neck issues, I probably could have made at least another good 5, 6. That was a pretty physical bumper.
Yeah.
Not crazy bumps like you, but a snapback bumper. But now when I look back, I think had I stayed in the business, because I feel pretty decent right now, but there's days I feel like shit. I think I would feel more like shit had I got that extra 5 or 6. So I'm probably cool. Well, I am cool because I got all the business out of my system.
Yeah.
With riding off to the sunset when I did.
I had the sunset exit in 2000, and I had the sunset exit in 2004, and I had it in 2006. It was just I couldn't, it was like, who knew the economy was going to fall apart? Like, wait a second. So not only is the money I saved like not going to, it's losing money, and there was this sense that I'd just written a second novel, which the world did not exactly, line up to buy, and I was like, I can make as much money for a comeback match with Carlito. Like there was still a market for a Mick Foley match, like even if it wasn't a main event match, there was still something there, and I kept going to that well. And man, if I could have taken an eraser and rewritten history, anything post 2006 would have been off the record for sure.
So what about all this stuff with Christopher Nowinski, the Brain Institute, whatever it's called? I say that with respect. I just don't know what it's called.
Boston Center for Traumatic Encephalopathy.
Have you been there?
I just say that continuously because if I can continue to say it correctly, I know.
You still got it.
A couple times. And I want to do next year's show. I want to deal with some of the head trauma. And I've dabbled in it a little bit where I've said, as long as I continue to say the words Boston Center for Traumatic Encephalopathy, I know I'm okay. And a couple minutes later, I'll come back to the Boston Center for Traumatic Encephalopathy, and I'll start coming up with different ways to screw up the name.
Right.
And it's an uncomfortable laughter because not everybody understands that I'm messing it up on purpose. And it's kind of like a clever thing where you're getting the laughs from a few people, but it's like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be laughing at this guy's expense.
Right.
And that's one of the things I'm looking for is like, if I do want to make a serious statement in my show, how do I do it? And I've talked to Brendan Burns, who's a brilliant comic from Australia and knows the wrestling business, has a real good feel for the wrestling business. If it wasn't for the fact that Vince would personally hate him and have him thrown out by the end of the first day, he'd been an outstanding asset to the writing team. And I asked him about that, and he's like, mate, you're going to get that series, you got to have a killer Final 15. And I don't have a way to go from there. But it's like you drive down the road. It reminds me so much of like coming up with a match for a pay-per-view. Like you get your sections, you got your moves. Especially for me, I had a limited set of moves, and I had to keep thinking of different ways to combine them, throw them in, different ways of making the matches exciting. And when it clicks, the same way that, the match would come together and click and you'd have that vision in your head, it's the same feeling of fulfillment. I'm not there yet. I don't know how to do next year's show yet. I'm having fun.
So how's the gray matter inside your cranium? Are you good? You fucked up?
Well, it's going to be a waiting game. I'm donating.
I have little
brain.
memory lapses here and there now. Sometimes I can't, I always joke to my damn wife. I say, hell, man, sometimes, Kristen, the faster I cross the room, the sooner I forget why I crossed it. I have a fleeting moment like that, but I can't say that that's because I got hit with a bunch of steel chairs because I was a hands-up guy. Probably had, 2 to 3 concussions due to activity in the ring, just to a bump gone wrong.
Yeah.
So I can't chalk it myself up. And I got lit up playing football now here or there a few times.
When they asked me how many times have you seen stars, that's another. I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, hundreds? You're telling me? And
Brother, you don't see stars, you see constellations.
I used to wrestle Undertaker, and then I'd charge him in that corner. He'd bring up the boot, and I'd have the chair in my hands. Yeah. And the percentage of people who would have known the difference between real contact and some space would be so minimal. But to me, if I didn't feel those stars, I wasn't doing it right.
Right.
Going back in time, I would have had that hand. What would it have hurt?
Right.
To put not only the hand up between my chair and and that boot, but to put that chair up when that hand up when those chairs were traveling at high speed.
Mick, you went to wrestling school, and at the core, your beginning was with Dominic DeNucci, correct?
Right.
Now, in the School of Professional Wrestling, 2 questions. How long was the wrestling school, and did you learn how to take a chair shot?
I'll answer no.
2 questions.
All right, yeah. I'll answer the second one first.
Okay.
No, there was never like a chair shot class.
Okay, then we'll skip the rest of the wrestling. Talk about a chair shot, because all of a sudden there I was in Dallas, Texas, soon to go down to Tennessee, and I'm forced to use a steel chair because as an angle ensues or progresses, you get in your first angle, inevitably a chair will come into your hands or onto your head. You've either got to take it or receive it. You have been trained to do either one.
No.
Neither one.
No.
So what was your experience with the steel chair?
You know, in Dallas, they had that one clunky steel chair. Like, no one even thought, hey, why don't we go to a department store and buy steel chairs? Even when I remember wrestling staying at Beach Blast, and part of the reason we did well is because I went and searched the arena and found a steel chair. Sid had a match earlier on. They went to use a chair, and they had that horrible cushion chair with the hinges that looks awful.
Yeah.
It doesn't
because it looks to the crowd like, first of all, those chairs are heavy. They hurt your vertebral structure. Yeah. But to the crowd, because they have a pad on them, that doesn't hurt all of a sudden. Yeah. So then you have to go to the core steel chair.
Exactly. And the one we had in Dallas was awkward, had rust all over it.
Piece of shit.
And one of the first times I took a chair, I broke my thumb, putting my hand up. And the lesson I took from that was my head was harder than my thumb. Wrong lesson. Yeah. But also keep in mind that at that time, you were working a gimmick, and you were working a character. And I had an act, and when I say he was on me, I mean in a good way. He would come to me and, Jack, you work so hard. Yeah, he goes, but you're so nice to the fans. Like that was my weakness when you're in a territory every week, every Friday, Saturday. Yeah. People get that feel. It's part of what I talk about during my current show. And I love talking about it. I love the current show. I try to figure out ways every night to make it better, but I talk about that almost like collective realization, after a certain point, where you'd see all the wild moves, and I had the eyes, which always put a question mark in people's minds. But it would be like about that 6-month mark. If you'd watched for 6 months steadily, and then I'd come down with that elbow, I'd look up at that camera, it was almost like you could feel people going, oh, he's a nice guy. Like they would. Oh, you got that? I thought you was crazy. What? And I mean, that's a compliment. And I was helped in WWE, the mask, right? Which I only recently came to find out through Bruce Pritchard was really just Vince's way of hiring me while covering up my face. Really? It was not meant as a deep psychological ploy. It was just JR waging a steady campaign on my behalf, and finally Vince slamming his hand down at a meeting, going, "All right, damn it, I'll bring him in. I'm covering up his face." Like, this is a quote. Is that a shoot? That would have stung a little bit had I known that. Dude, when you cut off that beard and all the bullshit, you're a good-looking dude. Yeah. I mean, you're a former travel partner, great friend. Here I am, straight as now. You're a good-looking dude. I was not a bad-looking guy, and I had to do a lot with smoke and mirrors, but that goes back to creating that image. In the Sportatorium, you would go up, you'd have Bill Koval, and Big Mike, Cowboy Bill, walking you up that really protective rope that would keep you from the fans. It was like that rope. It was big around as this cord that goes to my Mac laptop computer, and that rope, the barrier said to the people, "Do not cross. You stay here, wrestlers over there." It was the most horseshit, unsafe environment in the history of the wrestling business, but it was great. It worked for the Sportatorium. It worked for the Sportatorium. You look back at all the missed opportunities. Nobody taking a guardrail. You couldn't shoot somebody into the rope. A little white clothesline. Take me into the guard rope. But I would walk up after Bill would lead me in. There'd be like that 20-foot walk from the aisle to the dressing room. And to the day it was torn down, there was a section that was almost completely dented, because when I would come back from my matches, you'd have 10 or 12 people looking at you. I would slam my head 5-6 times in there, because the idea was those 10 people would tell 10 other people. And he really is crazy. Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, I knew where the beams were. At least I thought I would. I'd avoid the beams. Yeah. Usually I missed them. Right. Sometimes I wouldn't. Right. Looking back now in 97, when my back really seized up on me and I was really struggling, but needed to give people what I thought they deserved as far as a physical match was concerned. Right. Like, I was, okay, I can't take the bumps that I'm known for. How do I create the illusion, of wildness?
And this was in WWF.
This is
correct?
WWF.
Yeah,
I'm working
but
with,
let's go back to World Class Championship Wrestling, because you broke into the business in what year?
I broke in 85.
85. By the time you got down to World Class, you might have been there before, but I remember paying a ticket to see you wrestle.
Thank you.
There I was, and then I was in Chris Adams' school.
Yes.
And you saw me when
First
you was out
day
there in the
and
crow's nest.
This is another statement of where my head was at the time. I'd been gone from home for 7 or 8 months. I could have easily said, "Can I have 1 week off to go back home and see my family?" Really would not have been an issue. But in my head, there needed to be a reason why I wasn't at that TV. In retrospect, how many people would have cared? How many flags would have been raised? They said, "Why isn't Cactus Jack at TV?" I thought I needed a reason, and the reason was I'm going to be stretchered out.
Right.
And for the $25 Friday, Saturday morning payoff, I took the Nestea plunge off that ring apron, and you could actually see on
That's
the thing.
what I'm getting at. That
spitting
Nestea
up,
plunge.
Yeah, spitting up, coughing up gobs of blood, and then Akbar cuts the great promo, where he goes, Mark Lorenz says, "Okay, Cactus Jack, never mind that. Look at this expensive shirt." And Ak told me later, that's what he always did, was plant that seed,
Right.
like that he deep down didn't care about his guys. But instead of going home, I got carried out. I wasn't going to let anybody see me walk out of that arena. I was going to wait until so many hours had elapsed that there would be nobody to see me leave. When I got powerbombed on the concrete by Vader in WCW, I left my car in the parking lot for 6 weeks. Because that was the type of thing that made a difference.
And they didn't tell the summit off?
At that, no, that was...
That's back in the old days. You'd have been gone in 3 days, 72 hours these days. Hey, man, when you used to drop that elbow or the
well, let me just make... But the point was, that's why I was in the crow's nest, because I didn't want anybody to see me leaving the sportatorium. And I just happened to be there on the day that class began. And you know the way a wrestling group school is. It's like, you can kind of cast off just about almost all the guys almost immediately. And sometimes you're going to make a mistake, as people did with me. But it was like, oh, all right, that one kid's got that it thing going on. And obviously, it turned out to be you.
Yeah, shit, I got lucky. But I remember going. I want to go back to you dropping that elbow off, because you always dropped it off on that one side. It seemed.
Yeah.
Because crow's nest was here. You got to drop it right there. I'm sitting there drawing on my table here, and Mick's saying, "Yeah, so it's true. You just can't see it. It's audio, not video. I got to learn that. I'm gonna get some cameras in here one of these days." Dude, what made you decide to take that leap of faith onto concrete way back in the day? And was it because that was who Cactus Jack was? Was he out of control, crazy, willing to inflict damage on a person however he could? Or were you looking at its core when you started doing that to be noticed by somebody to get a push?
Robert Fuller was one of the first guys that had faith in me. I think you had about as good a time in Memphis as I did.
I learned a lot.
I learned a lot too. Yeah. I didn't like it. I've since made peace with Randy Hales. Randy brought me and my family to circus. I realized a valuable learning experience. You go in, you don't know who your opponent is until you get, you see your name on the chalkboard.
Right.
You walk out there, you haven't seen the guy, haven't talked to him, you're putting a match together. You're learning as you go. I learned a lot, but I wasn't treated particularly well there.
Gotcha.
And Robert was the guy who had faith in me. And Robert saw me take and I'm going to drop a second F-bomb on you.
Go ahead.
This is a noteworthy line.
This is unleashed.
Robert saw me take that Nestea plunge at a spot show for a $25 payoff. And, man, that concrete just about knocked me out. And it opened up a nasty wound on the back of my head. And I went back in, and Robert goes, "Damn, Jack, looks like a pussy sitting on your head. I don't know whether to stitch it or fuck it." I don't do Robert Fuller justice.
I've never asked anybody for an instant replay in all my life. Repeat that punchline again. Mother, that is tremendous.
In slow motion. "That looks like a big old pussy on your head. Damn, Jack, I don't know whether to stitch it or fuck it."
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
But on the way home, he told me, "Listen, son, that's a mighty impressive bump. I'll stop trying to do Robert's voice.
No,
but
it's
a
good,
mighty
yeah.
impressive bump." He said, "But you gotta take care of yourself. You have to do these things when they're meaningful." A couple weeks later, we're driving And Robert's a lead heel in Memphis, and he's, Robert had a great mind, and it just wasn't clicking that day. He's like, I don't know what to do. Man, he didn't want to blow off the angle in the first week. He was looking for a way to do a return match. And I said, Rob, I have an idea.
And what was the program?
This is Jeff Jarrett had just gotten Robert's loaded boot.
Okay.
So he had the loaded boot, and we knew there was going to be trouble. And
to any of my Steve Austin show listeners out there that don't know what a loaded boot is, Mick, what is it? Because people are there, what the fuck's a loaded boot? Yeah.
He actually had some kind of apparatus sewn into the sole of the boot, and he would kick, it, and it would jingle, and then he would use it, and there'd be bloodshed.
For example, like when Cornette had the tennis racket, sometimes they would load that thing up, and they'd put a horseshoe in the zippered covers. That's loading. And that's putting a foreign object or a piece of steel, allegedly, or sometimes for a shoot, in an object. So Robert Fuller, loaded the
boot. Jeff Jarrett had gotten a hold of the loaded boot. We knew there was going to be trouble. But in Memphis, you have to come back 4 or 5 times. You're there every week. You have to think of a way to come back next Monday. And Robert was looking for a way to the next Monday without blowing off the program in the first week. And I was riding with Robert. If it had been anybody else in the territory, and I said, I've got an idea, I probably would have been just ignored or shunned. Right. And he goes, well, damn, Jack, let me hear it. And I said, well, I think this might be the time for that ST plunge. And as it turned out, I didn't know at the time that, the wrestling fans had their annual convention, and, the Observer was there. And, I ended up taking that ST plunge in front of like the hardcore, Observer fans.
Right.
And I guess it left a pretty lasting memory, and there's blood. I mean, it was a pretty wild scene, but it was the right bump for that show. And then every time especially when I turned babyface, we were looking for ways to create that type of impact. From a selfish point of view, though, I realized, wait a second, I need to have something offensive. Like, this can't be my calling card, is that everything I do.
You're sacrificing your body.
Yeah. Like, how
you're beating you up, not him.
How do I take that willingness and ability to absorb punishment and make it work for me offensively? And I wanted to be the guy. I mean, I was a Superfly fan. mean, I used to. One of my firmest memories in college is I was looking out at this house. I was at a party, a sophomore in college, right before a couple months before I ended up meeting DiNucci, and I was like just looking at the house next door. A guy comes over to me, a good friend of mine. He goes, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "Do you think if I dove off the top of that roof, would that garbage can break my fall?" Like I always wanted, I needed to know there was something. I was big, like, would that break my fall? All right, if I dive off of this sand dune with the waves coming out with those 3 inches, would that break my fall?
Right.
I wanted to be a Superfly guy. I couldn't because I couldn't balance on the top rope. And you couldn't do anything as good as Jimmy did. I'm a firm believer, why be the second best at something? I was just talking today on the hip-hop station at Sirius about
you're a big hip-hop guy.
It was a perfect fit. It was not likely to draw a single fan to one of my shows. But I was asked about the evolution. Just hear me out here for a second. Yeah. The evolution of mankind and the fact that it was actually the cell match that made me see, wait, I got to find a different way to connect with people. And you may not want to take credit for this, but when your character just skyrocketed, they were like 6 or 7 like Steve Austin lights. Like guys saying, I'm going to, and people, whether they knew it or not, were trying to be like you and not being successful at it. And I was a big believer. I'm not gonna be the 7th best Stone Cold. There's an open market there for like the nerd fans, and I need to find a way to make some people laugh to make that connection. So I went in that direction. But going back to the elbow, that was my way of finding, taking the talent that I did have for taking some wild chances and making it work for me as an offensive move.
But a question, and before I ask you the question, when I'm talking about loaded objects, one of my favorites from Mid-South Wrestling, Bill Watts, a loaded Gucci bag. Missy Hyatt would whop Dark Journey with that loaded Gucci bag. I mean, that was one of the damnedest loaded gimmicks of all time, Missy Hyatt's loaded Gucci bag. If you hadn't seen it, go back and Google Mid-South on YouTube. Hey, man, do you own or rent your home? Sure you do, and I bet it can be hard work. You know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com. Hey, man, the good folks over at Right Guard recently sent me some of their extreme antiperspirants and aluminum-free deodorant, and I have to say, I dig them. I'm a fan of both. Right Guard formulas are designed to defend against sweat, odor, and stains with up to 72 hours of protection. I might have got up to 73 hours. The Right Guard research team has stepped up to the plate to help prevent yellow stains by finding a way to protect from stains without lowering the level of antiperspirant protection. Gone are the days when you have to choose between a fresh feeling and a yellow pit stain. Throughout the entire antiperspirant lineup, get it all. The sweat and odor protection you expect while fighting yellow stains. Want to go aluminum-free? Right Guard's extreme aluminum-free deodorants also have odor defense technology to give you protection for up to 72 hours, immediately targeting odor and neutralizing it, resulting in long-lasting protection from odor, keeping you smelling fresh for days. Right Guard's extreme aluminum-free deodorants are not only free of aluminum, but it's also free from alcohol, talc, and parabens. Right Guard antiperspirants and aluminum-free deodorant don't feel greasy or sticky. They go on smooth and last. Don't sweat it. Get Right Guard. All right, coming back with Mick Foley. My question to you is, Mick, when you did that, what do you call it? The fallback?
The Nestea plunge.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question for you, Mick, is when you took the Nestea plunge to help preserve that angle so that you didn't have to blow it off that night, and so that it was so, satisfactory, a feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Did you become addicted to that and say, hey, I got to do this more? Because I know you're just talking about moving to the future. You need to use it on the offensive front. But did you become almost a thrill seeker or a pain seeker in wanting to take the bumps you did?
I was pretty realistic. I mean, I didn't know the long-term ramifications. Right. I didn't know, for example.
Let me ask you this first. How far down the road were you looking in your career? Because I didn't look down the road, man. I was living for the here and the now and waking up the next morning.
Steve, even in Dallas, I gave myself till I was 26. I'd like to think I would have had the strength of character to admit that gig was up. If I was 26, I wasn't making a decent living. Livable apartments, car.
Were you married in Dallas?
No, I wasn't. Okay. I wasn't married. And I would go down to the TV studio in Las Colinas twice a week, and I would watch video Bob Von Gursky put the show together. And it's funny, if people go back and watch the old World Class show, I would do several of the voiceovers. I produced a couple of the videos. Really? I was pretty hands-on. There was even a time when Bob wanted to take a vacation. They were going to put me in charge of directing the show because I had the background in college. I was always fascinated. I was considered a pain in the neck by some people because I was walking around saying, can you get this camera shot coming from a low, the camera, here's the elbow, and I realize it's my bread and butter. And at that time, it was the 13 to 14 foot, length, back when I had a little spring in my legs. Yeah. And even then, there was very little. But I realized.
But you were already looking to the people with the camera to help you look more like a superstar.
So if people go home and they watch that Nestea plunge with Mil Mascaras, it's a hell of a bump. But Jackie Crockett had the perfect camera shot, and as I hit, he shook that camera.
Right.
And like I said, when I got to WWE, there was just a little bit of feeling, when I would walk through, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And now the producers are up there. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? How can we do this? And I hadn't seen my match with the Big Show in the Boiler Room in years. My son Huey is such a fan. I don't, as a habit, go back and watch my old things.
Me neither.
But I remember Kevin remarking he liked the way, the knock on me, from people who were not Mick Foley guys, for lack of a better word, they're just a big bump guy. But I always wanted there to be a story, and I remember Kevin Dunn really heaping praise on me, after that match when I was clearly way past my physical prime, and I was just about to go out for some fairly extensive knee surgery. We told a heck of a story, complete with, as I made it to that wall, I made sure, with the palm all bloody, that I had that palm print. and smear. Like, he was going to leave an impression. So I was a real big believer in thinking visually way back. I think before it entered most people's minds.
You brought up a name there, Mil Mascaras. There's a story there. Were you a Mil Mascaras fan?
I did not enjoy working with Mel, and I know, Alberto's his nephew. I recognize he's a legend who drew money everywhere that he went, but he wasn't interested in doing business that night, and I tried to remember the way.
So what was the story? This was it a pay-per-view?
It was a Clash of the Champions,
and so you're going to work with Mil Mascaras.
I'm going to work with Mil.
What's his beef with you?
No beef, but WCW were sometimes not big picture thinkers.
Correct.
We were in Corpus Christi, and the small picture is let's get a pop from the Latino audience. Bigger picture is here's a full-time guy. Why are we having? He has got some promise. He's a guy we want to use. Why are we having him lose on national TV in the Clash to a guy who won't be here ever again? And I was set to, Mil was late, missed his flight, set to wrestle Rick Fargo, actually pick up a victory on Clash of the Champions. And then, Mil came in, I'd say 20, 25 minutes before the match. And it was just a series of arm drags. I managed to get that last, that one move. And I just wanted to kick out, and I caught flack, from the powers that be. You were not kicking out under. And I wanted that image. And I didn't get it, but what I did have was Jim Ross and Jim Cornette making me look like the superstar that Mil didn't,
right.
As great as JR's, God is my witness, broken in half, not far behind it, and much less heralded was Cactus Jack is dead. Jimmy had that high voice.
Yeah.
Wasn't a perfect TV voice, but you go back, he was quick.
Yeah.
He knew his wrestling. He got people over. And I liked people who put the product before themselves, even if they had a larger-than-life personality. And there were a lot of guys who spring to mind. Cornette was one of them. Michael Hayes, I thought, was very unheralded as an announcer, as was Kevin Sullivan, who, even though these guys were gimmick guys,
right,
would go out of their way to put the guys in the ring over, which
right,
I try to keep in mind when I had my short stint behind the microphone.
So where did the Cactus Jack gimmick come from?
Cactus Jack was
Who was he?
He was Cactus Jack was my generic gimmick that I was only going to do long enough to become Dude Love.
Dude, you was born in Indiana. You grew up on Long Island. How in the hell did you come up with Cactus Jack? Because that ain't Long Island.
Listen. My dad, and I wrote about this in my book, but I love and miss my dad, and I'll take this opportunity to talk about him. My dad had a reputation in our school system as a disciplinarian. The fact that he had a kid who, sometimes did things a little differently, was a cause of some concern, because my dad was like such, the crew cut, there's no pictures in the Foley family vault of my dad with bell bottoms and pork chop sideburns. He was the crew cut guy. He was the athletic director. And in the book, I talked about how Ward Melville High School was the only high school that didn't allow any taunting or stomping when opponents were taking foul shots, because they would try to do that. And my dad would just look up at that crowd with, we had this one glance, and you'd see 800 people stand down. And Cactus Jack was just that name that I came up with for my dad when we were playing. It wasn't an internet wrestling game. It was the magazine wrestling game. You could send away, you cut something out from the Bill Apter magazine, and then 3 months later you got this little board game. And there would be characters that you knew were supposed to emulate WWE, WWF guys. The characters that were supposed to, the Dusty Rhodes character, a very similar name. And then there were some spaces where you could fill in your own names. And I was Big Train Foley. That's who I thought I was going to be. And my dad was Cactus Jack.
Yeah.
And so later on, as months passed, and I created this Dude Love persona for myself, which really was a wig, an orange headband, and a pajama top that somehow made me feel cool. I would put it on, I would go out at night, and I would have confidence that I did not have without it. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but I was smoother. I could talk with women in a way I never could as Mickey Foley.
Mickey Foley. So when were you doing the Dude Love?
I was doing it as a I did it, in a home movie that involved the first.
So you were Dude Love some 10, 20 years before you turned into Dude Love.
I was Dude Love in
WWE?
80. Yeah, I was Dude Love in 85 and 86, and then the deal was, I became Cactus Jack. I was Dude Love in 83 and 84. Started wrestling in 85 with the intention of becoming Dude Love when I got good enough to earn that name.
Right.
And then along the way, I realized, Mother Nature is not cooperating. I'm not Dude Love. I am this guy. It's Cactus Jack on the surface seemed to be like a Western motif, and we kind of turned it into something completely original. With a very generic sounding name, created a very original concept.
Where did Bang Bang come from?
Bang Bang, man, I love this story. It was just like some of the craziest things, just come out of thin air. It was, if I say, you're going to pop, and people won't see you smile, but if I say the name Nasty Ned Brady, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. He was I never call him job guys. He was an enhancement guy who had the greatest facial features, the greatest facial expressions, kind of like buggy whip arms. He was like me without the love handles. He was like a thinner version from a muscularity standpoint. He's like me without the added body weight. And he sold things magnificently. And at the third or fourth week, I guess, it was November of 89. I'd been turning on my partners for 3, 4, 5 weeks. It was starting to catch on. Like, people were actually looking forward to these tag team contests that I would lose or my partner would lose, and I would then turn on that partner with the elbow, and then put him out 12, 13 feet. Boom, here we go. And I dropped that elbow, and it was a good one on Nasty Ned Brady. And as I lay there, as I sat up, the song Love Shack, B-52s, came into my head. And you can see it on the For All Mankind DVD. I actually say, bang, 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 on the door, baby. I actually sing the lyrics. And that was the last time I sang the lyrics. But I kept bang, bang. It was also, I believe, either that night or the next night, the last match I wrestled with front teeth. I was went home, was at a friend's bachelor party, and we got hit head on by a drunk driver, and those teeth were history, against my better judgment. I had well-wishers come to the hospital and say, hey, this is good for wrestling. And I'd be, no, that image of the guy with the missing teeth that's long gone, and this is not good. And then when I showed up, I remember Jim Ross going, great look. and you got to take what you can.
Yeah.
You got to take what you can. And so I thought, this is a pretty good look. So much so, I've never really gone to replace them.
So what was your favorite part of you to be? Mick Foley, Dude Love, Mankind, Cactus Jack? Did I get them all?
I love, you know what, Steve?
What's the difference between all of them?
We collectively, and I'm talking about WWE, I'm talking about Vince, specifically in one case, Hunter, did a great job of creating the differentiation in people's minds. To some people, they say, forget about the cell match. My favorite moment is when you did the promo where you transformed from Mankind to Cactus Jack, keeping in mind that all I was doing was removing one shirt to reveal another. And the character wouldn't have been dead, but greatly reduced had Hunter just laughed and given that you're the same guy with a different shirt. Right. And he didn't go that route. He put it over like he was seeing a ghost, like a larger-than-life superhero. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, And it was one of those, great moments, like a do-or-die moment. This guy either means something or he doesn't. And fortunately,
But he saw that.
Yeah, he saw it. It meant something. And quite honestly, you go back, and if you're looking for that mythical Cactus Jack, like, he's there in spots, there's certain matches where I was as good as, Hunter was making me out to be, but I think WWE did a very good job of creating this mythical character from a guy who was a very good performer, but not mythical by any means.
So then, which one of those guys was your favorite to be? Which one of those guys was your favorite to work? Or which one of those guys was easiest to work?
The closest to my heart was the Commissioner in 2000.
Yeah.
Where I completely changed courses. And I said, I went home. I did believe I was retired, and I went to Hershey Park, and I traded out a 20-minute Q&A in the park for like the run of the place for 4 days, meals included. So I made out pretty well in that deal, and I had one of those little shaving kits, the head shaver. I went home and I went back to the room, shaved off all my hair, which had been a trademark, had been long since '85. And my son Dewey was there. He thought it looked cool, so I shaved his head too. We got some great photos of us going down the log flume with no hair, and that was my signal to myself. I would never do anything in the public eye ever again. That was dead set, never. And it was 2 days later. I get a phone call. I get home and I get a phone call. Hey pal, how'd you like to be the commissioner? And I was like, all right, and I showed up, and and somebody.
That "Hey pal" was the famous Vince McMahon phone call voice, which is either the best phone call you could ever take, or a bunch of hassle.
And it was that same "Hey pal." It was like at 7 a.m.
He's so charismatic, and he's good on the phone.
Hey pal, but 7 a.m. like the
hey,
guy
pal.
never sleeps.
Yeah,
anyway,
got an idea for you.
How'd you like to be Dude Love? And I went, like, once.
He said that to you?
He said that to me on the phone.
They came up with Dude Love?
No. What it was, and this, I remember this.
You already been Dude Love.
This is, you said this to me, and this is one of the things I talk about during the current show, because I love the idea that I can take people back and go into Mankind and give them that feeling of being that 97 Mankind by taking them back to the interview segment. Right? Dustin Rhodes had just done what was at the time really groundbreaking interview where he said, I'm Dustin Runnels, I'm the son of a famous wrestler, talking about living in his dad's shadow.
Yes.
He referred to it as his character, or I don't think it's his gimmick, but his character. And WWE wanted to do the same thing with me as Mankind, because Vince had come to realize that I had a more interesting real-life story than the fictional one we created as Mankind. And it was one of those things, again, where you have to have a feel for your character. You got to fight what you think is right. And they wanted me to go out and talk to the fans just as I'm talking to you and say, my name is Mick Foley. I used to be Cactus Jack. I've been wearing this mask. And I said, man, I got a lot of time and effort tied up in this character, and I propose that we go out unscripted. Jim Ross pulled it off. Probably nobody else could have, and for years I considered it to be one of the top 2 or 3 things I'd ever done in the business. I said, what if JR asks me questions? I will answer them with 100% honesty, but I'll do it in character. And you probably heard this as well. I remember Al Snow telling me that the first day I was in WWE, that you couldn't really become a top guy until Vince personally became a fan. And up until that night in 97, that wasn't the case. Like, I was used good, I'd been on top of a couple of pay-per-views. I think if you'd ask Vince deep down, are you a fan of this guy? He would have been on the border. And JR and I just went in, and again, to me, the intangibles, like that magic in the air is can't be scripted. It's gotta be an element there. And I think we lose some of that. I think with the scripting, you lose a lot of the lows. Mm-hmm. You eliminate a lot of the horrible interviews, but you also lose that element, the possibility of magic. And if they'd scripted that, it may have worked. It wouldn't have worked on a level that it did, because it was like, I remember you and I riding, and by that time you were kind of a loner by 97, So it was unusual that we'd be riding again like the old days. And I remember you saying, "What are they doing, kid? They turn you babyface?" And I said, "No, Steve, I think they just want people to get a better feel for the character." You looked at me and said, "You'll be a babyface in 3 weeks." And at the best of my knowledge, it's the only time that I can recall a turn taking place without any in-ring change, without any saving of a hero. It was just that every week they would unroll this thing. And when I told the story, I didn't even know Vince was in the room. It was all dark. And they said, all right, we're going to change tapes. And I heard a voice in the darkness go, "This is outstanding." And I was like, that's it? Like, I'm a made man in WWE. Like, that was the most pivotal moment, I think, of my career when I became a star in WWE.
Right.
Yeah.
God dang, that's
it's going pretty well, right? I was a little nervous we weren't going to live up to the billing. We're doing pretty good.
No, we are living up to it. But what I want to do, I'm going to run to the refrigerator. I'm going to grab an ice cold beer, and I want to continue the conversation, but this will be for next Thursday. I want to talk about ECW. I want to talk about your thoughts on promos. I mean, the stuff you were cutting in ECW was just pure gold. And, man, I was there to just watch it. I mean, all through your career. I mean, multi-layered, complex shit. I mean, it was crazy. And so I enjoyed watching all that and listening to it. So, but before we leave, we know you're on the road.
Yeah, I'll be in Thursday night. I'm in Brea. Friday and Saturday I'm in Ventura, and then I take a little time off to go to professional Santa Claus school in Denver, and then I pay for that trip by doing a show in Denver on July, because I'm still old school that way, August 31st, and then as you mentioned, I got like a 3-week run in British Columbia and Alberta, Canada.
And we're going to pick some of those up on the next show we're fixing to do on Twitter. He is real Mick Foley, because there's some fake Mick Foleys out there. He's the real one on Twitter, real Mick Foley. His website, you can catch all his dates for his one-man show, realmickfoley.com. All kinds of cool shit coming from Mick Foley. Anyway, shutting her down. Mick, appreciate it. We're coming right back for the next week's show. All right, everybody, give me to go home. Cue some to wrap up this podcast right off in the sunset. Don't forget to rate and review the Steve Austin Show on Apple Podcasts, and tell your friends to check us out. If you want to reach me here on the podcast, send an email to questions@steveaustinshow.com. I want to thank everybody for supporting Broken Skull IPA, my beer from El Segundo Brewing Company. And we're in 17 states across the nation, and it has been received to critical acclaim. It's the best IPA in America, in my opinion, and I want to thank everybody for their support. I'm trying to give everybody I can a hell yeah, a cheers, or a thank you, whatever, when you post pictures on Instagram or Twitter. Just thanks for supporting the beer. I'm real proud of it. And we developed this beer, going over almost 5 years ago. And it's starting to roll out. And we're looking to expand more as we get through these hard times. Thank you guys so much for the support of the beer. I love it. I'm proud of it. And I think it's a damn good IPA. I'd like to say one more thank you to all the fine sponsors of the Steve Austin Show, especially BetOnline, Geico, Right Guard, and Rocket Mortgage. That's how I'm able to do this podcast for you twice a week for free. Please support them because they support us. If you need more info, check out the show description to this episode for details. Folks, we're going through some tough times. We've got to do some social distancing, follow the protocol set forth by, everybody you're watching on the news. We got to get through this so we can flatten the curve and make it on the other side and get our lives back to normal as soon as possible and get people back to work. This is affecting every single one of us, man, and we got to listen up and do our part. If you see me out in the woods, I'll be proudly riding a Kawasaki. Folks, until next time, my name is Steve Austin, and I will catch your ass down the road.
This has been a Podcast One production. Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.
The NFL Draft is coming up on April 23rd, and I have got you covered. It's Ross Tucker, former NFL player, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, the College Draft Podcast, which is obviously huge right now, the Fantasy Feast Podcast, and the Even Money Podcast, where you can learn what draft-related bets you should make over at betonline.ag. You can check out all of those shows at rosstucker.com, Podcast One, or wherever podcasts are found.